Warning: this podcast episode discusses sensitive topics, including mental health, abuse, and suicide. The content may be distressing or triggering for some listeners. If you or someone you know is struggling, please consider seeking support from a mental health professional or contacting a crisis helpline in your area. Listener discretion is advised.
Welcome to the Heart to Mic podcast. I am your host, Stephanie Cherono. Here we celebrate the power of authentic conversations, and together we'll explore our emotions, challenges, and growth through powerful storytelling. Hey guys, I don't know why I usually say hey guys, but one of the things that we picked up from season 1 is that majority of us are struggling with this quote-unquote daddy issues because of the unavailability of our fathers. I think that was the one episode where, the first episode especially, there was a lot of feedback regarding not having a present father or the effects that people have experienced in their adulthood because of the absence of their fathers. And I thought it would be best to tackle this topic with a professional, that being a therapist, who will help us navigate these things and even just find meaning to the title and how best we can deal with this going forward. And I have none other than Rubie in front of us. So Rubie can introduce herself and maybe you tell us more about yourself before we begin.
Hello everyone, my name is Rubie Miseda. I'm a registered and licensed psychologist here in Kenya. I'm also a criminologist and a sociologist, and I'm the founder of Africa Jipende Wellness, which is a holistic mental health organization. And basically what I did was I combined all my disciplines to try and find different mental health interventions for people who come from cultural backgrounds. Working in Kenya and working in the UK, I saw that the way we are socialized is very different. So how we understand our own mental health depends on the normality and the language used for people to understand what mental health is. So what I did was I basically went from a sociological perspective by understanding community. And then I broke down the clinical language on mental health to be much simpler for people to be able to look into themselves rather than point fingers. Because we've grown up in a society where I'm not the problem, it's that person who is influencing me. And you can also hear it from people's parents. So the whole concept was to create a healthy community. And our vision and our mission is to demystify mental health in Africa through therapy. Because I think that as a continent, we have gone through so much trauma. And that trauma has been passed on basically how we relate with each other. There are attributes of our culture that are beautiful, but there are also attributes of our culture that have caused us pain.
Yeah.
And now I thought that if we could do that in this manner, it will be easier for people to basically work on their mental health. Because I remember when I was practicing and I was using the clinical textbook language, I was not getting through to people. So I decided to create Jipende Wellness. And also mental health is very personal for me because I myself at a younger age, I experienced mental health issues. And the way the team that were there supported me, I was like, this is amazing. What if I could do something like this for people back home? So I always say I'm an unconventional therapist. I think you're aware of that.
Yes. Do we love that?
And when I started Jipende Wellness, I only did sessions twice in an office. But I always did it home-based because when I was working in the UK, I worked for a mental health organization which taught us how to do home-based therapy. So when I came back home to Kenya, I was told to wear a lab coat and casual clothes. And I was like, hey, this is not comfort zone. But I also realized that there was a distinction of, I am here to help you, but you are very, very sick. But I think we need to find a different way for people to understand mental health where they're not ashamed of it. Because our minds are very powerful, but our minds are also very delicate. So if we can make it easier for people to understand mental health, then it will become more acceptable and we can find different ways in which we can support each other.
Absolutely. What an intro, guys. If you're not going to go to Jipende Wellness after this, what are you doing with your life? Show me. But yes, I think also through our sessions, we have seen just the effects of just not having that father figure. So
Yes.
let's just start with the definition of like daddy issues. What do you think daddy issues are, and how do they manifest in adulthood?
Well, in a simpler way, daddy issues are wounds, emotional wounds pertaining the relationship one person has with their father. And it's more in line with the bonds and how their caregiver, being their father, interacted with them, taught them about values, morals, how they supported them, how they were basically not there for them. So it's more directed with their fathers.
How does that present itself in adulthood?
Well, it can present very differently. Number one, we will find out that there's a lot of insecure attachment styles. So there are different forms of insecure attachment. And what people don't realize is that attachment is bonds, right? How we connect with our parents. So you might find a person would want closeness, but then they're afraid of the closeness because they felt neglected as a child.
Oh, you're speaking to me. The waterworks are about to start checking in, guys, but I'm keeping it together.
But we're always a team.
Yes, yeah, we're always a team.
So it also, the thing is that I've noticed that we look at father wounds pertaining father-daughter relationships, but you can also see it with men. The father-son relationship. You can see the disparity and the disconnection of a father that is a stranger to a child but does financially provide. A lot of what I've been seeing, practicing here in Kenya, is I've been seeing a lack of emotional intimacy and intentionality in building a relationship with a child, knowing that this is a human being that has a personality, that has feelings, that sees the world in a particular way. They're probably sensitive. So I've noticed that culturally, right, the way men have been taught to raise their children is actually to emotionally neglect them as when they're younger, and then financially provide for them. For them, financially providing and putting a roof on top of their head
Being a father.
is being a father, right? But that's just being a financial aid.
Yeah.
Right? But what you'll find is the child really creates
The emotional aspect of it.
yes, and the affection, and they want to have this interactive, intentional relationship with their parents.
Hey, how can these unresolved wounds impact romantic relationships? And the reason why I think we've had a conversation about this before, but the reason why this is a concern, I mentioned in the previous episode that I've started dating.
Yeah.
So let me give you background. So there's a guy that I'm talking to right now. This is where the tease. No, production used this as the trailer. But there's a guy I'm talking to at the moment. And I genuinely believe that he's a healthy person. But like recently, those people who just overcommunicate. Hi, I've got to this place. I'm here. I'm moving here. And then now I'm home. Initially, I was like, oh my God, so cute. And then like a day ago, I was like, now why are you telling me all these things? Is there something that you're doing that you're hiding, which is why you're communicating? And then I realized that I may have a skewed like view of what relationships look like. And that's now related to the fact that I think having an unavailable father, like he was never there.
Yeah.
The relationship that I have with male figures is that I need to look for you because that's what I've been doing my whole life. So I'm chasing you. I am looking for you. I'm calling you, come for this, come for that. And every single time I'm met with like neglect. And I found that as I am dating in relationships, I'm attracting men who are not emotionally available. Although with years of therapy, shout out to Jipende Wellness, I have now been able to be aware
Yes.
of now the negative patterns. So now recently when that happened, I was like, and I had the conversation with him and I said, I think I might be either fearful of commitment, but also I may be uncomfortable because this is not the pattern I'm used to. I'm used to being the pursuer.
Yes.
And not the one being pursued. You are I'm practicing. Yeah. So now how do you think those unresolved wounds show up when we start actually romantically getting involved with men?
I think the biggest part here is the whole concept of normality. You know, what is a healthy relationship and what is a healthy relationship itself. But I think, remember, as we were talking and when we were walking this journey together, I had told you about the emotional experiences and attachment injuries. And you see, the attachment injuries is, and this is something that I stress about with the people I work with, because we have to understand emotional management. That's something we're not taught. Even when I speak to people about, so what does no mean like to you? Because no could be seen as a deterrent, or no could be seen as disobedience.
For me, I think sometimes when I think about that, I'll say no, but then I'll go back and I'm like, did I hurt them? Was I supposed to say that? And I'm compromised. I find myself either compromise or saying, oh no, but I'm sorry, I can now compensate for whatever I've not been able to do in the moment.
Yes. So there are three things that I've discovered in that format is relationship with control, punishment system, and reward system. One of the things people don't realize, once you get inside, it's now time to develop, expose yourself. So I think I've told you about this whole thing of the relationship timeline worksheet. So I created this relationship timeline worksheet and I broke down different elements. And it's something that I discovered, and shout out to Jipende Wellness members for allowing me to create models that can also help new members better. So the concept that I have found was number one, right?
The way you're smiling, I'm just like, is she about to talk about me? Anyway.
No, I'm not talking about you.
But I know this information may be useful to me.
Yes. So with a relationship timeline, you're looking at your history, your love history. And the interesting thing is that when you go through it, you'll find how it connects with your inner child experiences and whether your inner child attachment styles are coming out and whether you might be dating a particular character that you have built tolerance for. Especially the whole concept in our community, we tend to accept certain behaviors as normal, or we allow them to violate our boundaries because nobody is correcting it. Or based on the hierarchical system of culture and tradition, there's nothing you can do because you are a child, they are an adult.
Parent, yes.
And
or even a sibling.
Or a sibling. So you see the family history of emotional relationship, which is another way of saying generational trauma being passed down. So the work, the relation, so how that shows in romantic relationship is number one, what was your partner's attachment style in their relationship? What were your attachment style in the relationship? I've watched people who were already secure develop an anxious attachment style.
Oh, I've never been secure. Happy to inform you right now. I've never been an insecure, a secure bit, but I'm learning, guys. Jipende Wellness.
There's this thing called the adverse childhood experiences, which talks about how the child was being raised, you know, whether they saw violence, whether their parent made them feel safe or unsafe. So when a child is raised and made to feel safe, you'll find that they can put themselves out there and they can understand, okay, fine, you know, my heart can be broken sometimes, but you know what?
We're going to be okay.
We're going to be okay. It's part of life, right? While somebody who was raised in a home environment that was probably hyper vigilant, probably the adult's behavior was unpredictable. So they obviously navigate the world with fear. So when you enter into a relationship, and you find someone who probably is secure, it's just an example. You know, people can present as being secure, but they could be, you know,
insecure, low key.
Performative. Yes, I remember I was telling you about the dark empaths, right? So through that, you'll find that you start to feel afraid because it's not familiar. It's foreign. Why is somebody being so nice to me?
A foreign thing, like uncomfortable.
Very uncomfortable because you would probably feel that glimpse of that comfortability, then it's taken away from you. So then it's the cycle. So then people are anticipating, when is the person going to?
When is the ball going to drop?
Exactly. So back to the relationship timeline, right? You'll find that there's this whole thing. Remember I was telling you about core beliefs, right? So you look at the core beliefs. Do you feel like you're good enough? Do you feel like you're not good enough? That also stems from the upbringing. Did your parents feel like you are doing enough or not enough? And we can agree that kids who have gone through the Kenyan system, right?
It's never enough.
It's never enough.
It's never enough.
Even the government chooses for you universities and courses. That is so unfair. It takes away your independent thinking.
The freedom to choose.
Yes. Yeah. And then on top of that, you're punished for being outspoken. So just imagine those are all the parental techniques. And we're raised in a community.
Yeah. So
you see, those things are showing up in the relationship when somebody is trying to be there for you. You're rejecting it. You are leading with this injury. Like, I don't trust you.
I don't trust anyone, bruh.
Of course, because now nobody created that safety
for you to even experience trust in that form.
Exactly. So it brings a lot of confusion, right? And then at times people start to question, is there something wrong I'm doing? No, this person is tripping me out. And then you forget that also with your platonic relationships, you might even find that even your friends have that insecure attachment style. So even in the relationship timeline, who was supporting you? Were they also anxious attachment styles people supporting you, right? What were your unmet needs? What were the met needs? How were you taught how to resolve conflict? What was the conflict resolution, right? What were the boundaries?
Sorry to interrupt, but I think when you're speaking about all this like steps, when it comes to how was conflict resolved in our home, I think for the longest time amongst my siblings, we were just fighting. And I think with sibling rivalry, there's extremes, and for us, it was always extreme. It could even get physically abusive. However, when it comes to like this problem that has now led to us fighting physically being resolved, it was swept under the rug, or someone else would take blame for whatever, or because you're younger, respect your elders, things of that nature. How it has presented itself in relationships right now for me, I do think I don't run away from confrontation. I think I want to solve it. However, the minute you want to now tell me, so how does this make you feel? Why? Why do you want to know how it makes me feel? I'm just telling you this is a problem. I was not happy with it. That information, whatever you want to do with it, is up to you. But when it comes to actually dissecting the problem and like picking out, okay, so when I said this is how you made me feel, I find it very difficult to articulate that. Yet I already know these things. I already know, like, when you raised your voice, I didn't like it. When you did this, I didn't like it. And now I've realized that there's a difference. When it comes to men, I'm very quick and I'm sour and I'm harsh even with them. But when it comes to friendships, I find like, because I don't want to hurt you in the process of telling you what hurt me, I'd rather not say it.
So you're avoidant in friendships?
Yeah, avoidant, but also anxiously so. I think it's like an anxious and avoidant situation where I'm also anxious and fearful of potentially maybe losing this friendship because I'm addressing the issue. And I also feel avoidant because there's this discomfort of I'm not used to dealing with things, and now you want me to deal with things. So I'd rather avoid that and vamos. Whether you want to help us to fix it or not is not my thing.
And I think also the reason as to why it could also be very difficult for you is because it could bring out other emotions outside the situation.
Absolutely.
Right? Because when you feel those wounds, they're very uncomfortable. And then you realize that, oh my gosh, this person hurt me and I allowed it. There's always the self-blame, like, I allowed it. Why wasn't I strong enough? Because we're already taught that vulnerability is weakness. That's why when I start off with everyone, I ask people, did I ever ask you about how do you view vulnerability?
No, I feel like initially I had a skewed way of vulnerability. I was like, I'm open, I'm what? But I realized vulnerability even comes with the things that you've not entirely made peace with, or you've not entirely perfected, or you're still figuring out, or a weakness. I think I attached only vulnerability to my strengths. I was like, I can talk about the wins. I can talk about the things that I have already moved and recovered from. But these ones that I'm dealing with, I'd rather keep them to myself.
Exactly, because also we're taught not to share.
Yeah.
Right? So just imagine what people don't realize is that at times in romantic relationships, they can become emotionally dysregulated. Yeah. So instead of responding, they react. And if we go back to your experience with even your siblings, it was more of a reaction.
Yes.
Right. And nobody's sitting you guys down and asking, how are you guys feeling about what
ABCD.
is ABCD? So if that is something that was not provided for you, and then you come into a romantic relationship and somebody tells you, tell me how you feel.
That's exactly what he said. They said, why?
Exactly.
What do you mean, tell me how you feel?
And you'll even feel violated.
Yeah. And I was ready to leave, again, because that fights would happen, disagreements would happen, and one of us would walk out, one of us would leave, there was always walking out or avoidance in a way. So when I was asked this question, how does that make you feel? Why the change of heart? I was ready, like, we don't need to have this lunch. I'm trying to go home. This was great. Yeah. I had a good time, but after you've said I'm trying to go home.
Yeah.
And when he's like, literally he sat me and he's like, what is it about this that makes you uncomfortable? My legs were shaking because what do you mean you're asking me why this is making me uncomfortable? Don't you already know? Like,
that is an interesting factor because a lot of people assume that people can mind read their emotions. And that's what we call cognitive dissonance.
Yeah.
Irrational thoughts influencing your emotions. And mind reading is one of them. And you see, that's because even when our parents were talking to us about our emotions, they were discouraging it by threatening. I will beat you if I see you crying. Instead of having a candid conversation and finding out why are you feeling this way, right?
Yeah.
Maybe one child is more sensitive than the other. Maybe one child is dysregulated. Maybe actually all of you guys were upset that maybe there was no father figure there. Or maybe you were all upset because nobody's understanding the other person's opinion. Or everyone was upset because they can't articulate all the emotions that they're feeling.
Yeah.
So everyone was being reactive and defending themselves like you were in a battlefield.
That makes a lot of sense.
So you end up, after the battle is over, all of you go and isolate yourself and then deal with the emotional distress in isolation.
Yeah.
So what's happening with that situation with in that relationship is basically you are being triggered and your inner child was coming out in the driver's seat and saying, we don't do that.
We like them toxic niggas. We like them toxic and unavailable. Just easy nigali,
Exactly.
It's unfamiliar because the pattern that I'm used to is the one where I'm put on the driver's seat to pursue.
Yes.
Now you want to pursue me. Why?
Yeah.
It's uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Whew, child.
It brings a lot of mixed emotions.
Yeah. So because we've already talked about like the attachment styles, how do these daddy wounds affect how you relate the attachment styles? Because I already know I think I'm an anxious avoidant.
Yeah.
But like I'm sure for some people, because they're variables, I think you for my instance, my father was not emotionally, physically, or financially present. There are people who have a physically available father, and financially present, but not emotionally present. So how do these daddy issues, wounds, show up in how we now attach ourselves to people? And I don't think it's necessarily just to men, but also it can seep into just any relationship altogether, right?
Yes, you can. You'll also start to realize that, let's take, for example, your friend doesn't pick up your phone call.
Oh, child.
You actually feel rejected and abandoned, right? Because silence, and a lot of people who went to the Kenyan system, or even probably these international schools when they went to boarding school, it's a form of
isolation.
Yeah.
And me, I was taken to boarding school to in class 4.
I went to boarding school in year 1.
Jesus.
So there's this thing that I remember my cousin sent me, and he's like, hey, Rubie, I've come across this thing called boarding school syndrome. So the child is taken away from their household and taken to school, which the child views like a prison. So what happens is that separation brings perceived threat and fear. that nobody wants you. So when you have brief periods of silence, your mind starts to feel this person is abandoning me, this person is rejecting me.
I'm okay.
I was like, I hope I don't.
I'm alright.
Yeah.
I'm alright.
So a lot of the things is the way, one of the things I've noticed when it comes to these wounds, right, is how people attach with each other and how people communicate and how people communicate their emotional needs and how people communicate their wounds. So say, for example, you said your father was emotionally unavailable. Your father was financially unavailable. First, for the financial part, you do everything for yourself. So if somebody wants to pay a bill, right?
Yeah.
Your mind is like, So you want to come
and take control over my life.
Yes.
You want to come and pay for this nyama for 15,000.
Yes.
So that you can come and tell me.
Yes.
You know, that's totally how I feel. I don't even like anyone paying for anything.
But because a lot of people were also raised by single moms who were either still married, people don't realize that your mother can be married but could be a single mom.
Yes. There's a lot of those right now, especially.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I've noticed with a lot of girls, right, is they're leading with their masculine energy.
I am there. A lot of girls, guys. Breaking news. Kwan, 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 sisi meow, it is me.
Yes. and it's tremendous to see a lot of women like thrive in their career. But most of them is the fear that if I have a man and they leave me and I don't have my money, then I'm going to be like my
mom. And I'm going to suffer.
Yes. So imagine you come in these relationships, guns blazing. Right? So already, I would say, these wounds make the person defensive, aggressive, right?
Or it could be also, could it also be the opposite of that, where you're overly available, overly believing. Like it's just any person that shows any level of interest, you're quick to attach yourself to them.
Because of your craving for assurance and your craving to be seen and understood. Because that's what you were lacking.
What are the different attachment styles?
So we have, so there are a couple. So we have, and for secure, we have secure. And you can have a mix. So I'll just name them, and then sometimes they could be a mix. So they could be fearful, avoidant attachment style, anxious avoidant attachment style. You could even have dismissive, preoccupied attachment style. Some people don't realize that they can also become preoccupied.
How does that present itself?
Like workaholics, right? Hyper independent people, right? If you preoccupied your mind and your time, then there's no point of facing the thing in front of you. Distractions. Yeah.
And distractions can also be healthy and unhealthy. You can be a workaholic, or you can just be addicted to other things, people, or the need to fill that void by having like casual sexual relationships,
of course,
as opposed to the comfort or the confinement with a serious relationship where there's actually the need for you to present yourself in a healthy way every day.
True. And you know, I have a friend who had taught me this model called the Rises model about different levels of intimacy, and I started to apply that. And my friend is also a psychologist, and I found it was bringing out very interesting results because people don't realize there are different levels, there are different forms of intimacy. There's intellectual intimacy, there's emotional intimacy, there's spiritual intimacy. But with Africans, spiritual intimacy is, you know, their religion, but it's actually worldviews. There's recreational intimacy, which is interests. There's also sexual intimacy. So somebody can fixate on one emotional need that was not met growing up and then hyper focus on it to see this person as this great human, not realizing that they're developing more wounds, right?
Because you focus on this one, like when people say you grew up with a dad who was not financially present, then you meet a man who's financially present but emotionally absent. You're okay with settling for the financial presence, and okay with neglecting the emotional aspect of it.
Of course, because we are taught that we need a provider and a protector.
And the provider is always, in this term, it's financial.
Exactly. And the men like to talk about Proverbs 31.
Woman.
Not realizing that the Proverbs 31 woman is actually someone like you. You make your own money. You know, you like to take care of yourself and all these things. But people pick and choose what is convenient for them. Because at the end of the day, what I have noticed with people from cultural communities is talking about how somebody has hurt them in a manner of like, it really hurt. They want to talk it in more of, I'm angry, but anger is a protectant, hiding those raw emotions. And I do talk about this with a lot of people. Even when I was talking with my siblings, and I was like, you know, just tell me how you feel. If you're upset, it's fine. You know, if you're feeling angry, you know, take space appropriately, and then you come and have a conversation with me, and let's try and figure out what's happening. Because our emotions are telling us that this situation has made us feel this way. And then there's the whole impact of how it also changes our behavior. So we become on guard. And you see, as I was saying, when it comes to father wounds, when it comes to relationships and with romantic or platonic, you can see how it's broad. And basically from what we've been talking about, we've diverted into so many different
there's so many
things.
moving parts.
Exactly, and everything is connected in some way, right? Because this is how we were raised, and now how we were raised and our life experiences. Now we come join with someone and we expect them, okay, these are my wounds, I want you to fix these wounds.
And yet they have their own wounds, they have their own way they lived, they have their own experiences, their own expectations from these relationships. Their own wounds that needs healing. So that's where trauma bonding comes in, when you both of you are coming here to expect each other to fix each other.
Exactly. And you know, it brings in unrealistic expectations, because how are they supposed to heal something that they didn't do? Maybe they could have made you revisit it. So what people don't realize is that we get multiple triggers when we've gone through a lot of things. And maybe even in a romantic relationship where somebody is more secure, right? They're secure in themselves. They have a healthy relationship with themselves. They know how to express their emotions. They know how to communicate their wounds. They are aware of taking accountability. They're aware of their boundaries. And then also they create room appropriately for you to also share how they've affected you in that way. You'll think that's a joke.
Because you're not used to that.
And a lot of people don't do that.
We're not used to that. So like I think whenever, even in friendships, I think because of the pattern that I was used to in the past in friendships, where it was very hostile, there were extremes. It's either I'm really happy with you or I'm not. And now get to a space where I even have friends who want to talk things out. And if you're not able to even amicably come to a solution, we are going to bring someone else who's going to help us fix this thing, which is a healthier way to do it as opposed to just running. But like even in that moment, I've realized that there's aspects of myself that is fighting that, because it's a reality that I'm not used to. I'm not used to someone actually putting time aside to make sure that they effectively and efficiently communicate their hearts and want to hear my hearts as well, and for us to come to an amicable solution. I think earlier when you were mentioning, you told your siblings that how does this make you feel? I think every single time I ask my siblings, so this has happened, how does it make you feel? It's like, oh, Chero, you know, you're sounding like a therapist, Bana. What is this? You know, because we are not used to that. Like, it's not a reality that we had growing up. And it's unfortunate or fortunate enough, I think both extremes, that we are now getting to a space where that is something that we can discuss. However, the 27 years that we've lived our lives not having it is a lot of time to undo and accommodate a new reality and a new way of thinking. Yes.
And I think most people don't realize that the best time to even work on your relationship, right? Your romantic relationships, is before you have one. Because you yourself, you're going to come in your entirety and come to someone, and the way your life experiences, whether positive or negative, is going to show up there, right?
Yeah.
And I think as African people, as people from cultural communities, we need to realize that we are human beings and we have an emotional atlas.
Yeah.
Your emotions are telling you the story of what's happening to you. Let's not overcomplicate it. Why don't we work towards finding out, why are you feeling that way?
Why do you behave the way you do?
Exactly.
Which brings me into my next question. I've had situations in the past where I have, I think even now in retrospect, because I've not been in a relationship in like 3 years, but like I realized it was the same person, different body, the same person, different height, but like the same patterns were being replicated, the emotional unavailability, some level of narcissistic behavior, just a lot of like victim blaming. It's like I was the one who was constantly apologizing, even if I was the one who was being wronged in that moment. And I don't know, how do we, now that we're adults and we're trying to figure things out and just realize these patterns, how do we identify the patterns now that have been set by the relationship we have with our fathers in romantic relationships?
I think number one is to accept that was a norm, right? If you accept that was a norm, then it's easier to challenge that norm, right? And then also be compassionate to yourself and understand that you are a work in progress. And maybe those things that were happening to you in those relationships happened because you were unaware that this was not appropriate.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think it's just the unaware. We are children, and I think we get into relationships thinking, oh my God, this is going to be like a Brad Pitt and friend.
But they broke up, right?
Here we go. Kila mtu ako na wazimu in Nairobi. So you realize that I think, and also there's the fairy tale thing. I think for the longest time, and I still to this day watch a lot of rom-coms because I'm just like, yeah, I'm going to have my Prince Charming one day. But I think even the entertainment and movies, they've only romanticized the good aspect of things. They don't necessarily depict for us how relationships qua ground look like, and where now these attachments, father wounds, the background, where how you grew up, the things that you experience have influenced this thing. They just assume that these are two perfect people, no trauma, come together, fall in love, have babies, and they live happily ever after. And that is expectations that now when we get older, we have the expectation of this has to work. And this is how it's supposed to be, because we see the good things and we only focus on the good things. Oh, but he bought me flowers, he took me out. I've met his mom. Does not matter, I promise you. You can even meet even the grandparents. You can take them ata kidogo walete kuku nyumbani, but that does not count, because at the end of the day, if you have not dealt with the
then it comes out in the out.
Eventually.
Yeah. I think also to add on to the romanticizing shows.
Yeah.
There's also a lot of shows that romanticizes struggle, love.
And toxics.
Very. There's one that I was watching on Netflix. And it was, I think, I've forgotten the name. And this girl, she was nice, she was innocent. And then she meets this unstable boy who his mother has lied. His father is not actually his father, because the father is actually the best friend. He has an issue with drinking. But
was that filmed in Nairobi?
I don't know, but it was an American show. It was a British guy and an American woman. But what they had focused on in that, and that's one thing I was like, this is absolute
bonkers. Yeah,
was the sexual intimacy.
But also, guys, let me break it to you. Just because the sex is good doesn't mean you have to be beaten every day. You have to experience some level of neglect, because majority of people are saying because, if I go, and most times you meet someone who you may not have that initial sexual urge to be like, I want to take your clothes off because you're so hot. But eventually it is built on other aspects of intimacy. Maybe they show up in ways that has never been shown up before. And because of that affects how you view them sexually. But I think most of us look for that, I didn't feel the spark. I need the spark. I need to see them and just want to be like, nataka kukurarua. You understand? Like, those are the things we look for.
Yeah.
But then I've realized, even in this current situation, like, maybe that might come at the end, like eventually maybe we can get to a space where the emotional sexual intimacy matches the emotional intimacy.
True.
Or attraction rather.
And also one thing I've noticed with people with father wounds, both men and women, because I don't discriminate. I try to understand what's happening in both genders.
Yes.
Is there confusion between sex and love? And then also the other thing is when you are emotionally neglected, right? And somebody makes you feel nice. People don't realize narcissists come with charisma. Dark empaths come with, I'm creating an emotionally safe space. Yeah? Then you're hooked in that cycle. You don't know how to get out of it because you feel like, but what they're doing, they've been there for me when I was going through the hardest thing. People don't realize that a trauma bond is your abuser being your comforter. Right? If we just simplify it, like, so I come to you, Stephanie, and I'm like, oh, you're looking really nice. Then the next minute I pull your eyelashes. Then I come back and I say, sorry, I was actually just going through my own thing. Can I just glue and put it in?
And be like, it's okay, I understand. Yeah. And then the cycle continues.
Then I come the next minute, I pull your hair. So what happens is my reactive behavior is starting to feel normal because
I will counteract it with a gift or I will compensate in other areas.
Because that's what you were missing, reassurance and validation, right? And also we've seen our parents go through that.
Yes.
Whether mother or father, I've noticed, my mom said I stayed for the kids, or my father said he stayed for the kids. Then you go and realize that these people have double lives, right?
Oh, yes, we do. Yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah.
One is having a girlfriend here. The other one is having a boyfriend there.
We have other families. We are still discovering we have siblings.
Exactly.
Tunajaza nchi.
Exactly. So I remember my mother told me one day, and she told me, if you really want to know the true life of a man, you will know at his funeral.
Because the hoes will show up.
With their children.
The kids will pull up. We want the acres of land. Kwani?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Imagine.
I was about to make a dark joke, but I was like, just stop.
And it's so bad because even relatives encourage.
Absolutely. Like stay in the relationship because we stayed.
When I tell people that, like even how they make us like daughters step in as their motherly roles to feed their father. Like now you're the mother of the house. And then you find that people may have strange relationships with their fathers. And then you hear stories of, but my father takes care of me. And then they have a sexual relationship with their father. Even mothers, and I've said this in other podcasts, and I still stand by it. And Kenyan mothers, you need to stop doing this. You need to stop interfering in your children's relationships because you are in broken relationships. Go and see older therapists to help you articulate your normality.
And I think that is a big one. Put that on a t-shirt. But I think also I've seen that in regards to like how much your parents are in your love life.
Yeah.
And how they want to, project whatever they did not do or whatever they did in their relationships into yours. Or the fears that they have, the fears that they had in their own marriages onto your marriage.
Yeah.
And I think even the need to stay in like a unhealthy situation comes from because our parents stayed.
Yes.
But also they stayed and we still have trauma. All of us are in therapy. Whether the ones who stayed or the ones who left, we're all in therapy because all of us are dealing with something.
Exactly.
Because something in that equation we will lack.
I think if anyone wants to find out more about their father wounds, do a family history of emotional relationship. Start from your grandparents to your from your grandparents to your parents, then to you. You will see the patterns. You will see the wound.
What does this emotional history look like? What are they looking for?
What you're looking for is how people relate and build relationships with each other. You will find that your mother was probably a parentified child. And that's very, very common because I remember I was having conversations with mothers, right? and they tell me, Rubie, this whole mental health thing is very new to me. Yeah. As we didn't have a guidebook. And then, they start to open up to me and telling me what they've gone through. And it's really heartbreaking to realize that that was their life. And then you just realize, oh my gosh, you were actually, you're tired of parenting your child because you parented your siblings. You don't know how to select a life partner because you were raised to take care of a man's needs and everything he says must go. That's a bit of like enslavement, right? Takes away independent thinking. It increases guilt. So then even when your daughter could be probably going through certain situations, you'll just say vumilia too.
Yes, if it was you happen.
It's so sad that the cycle is being passed on.
Yes.
And I will say this to everyone who is watching this. When you come from a cultural community, you need to be in therapy for a very long time. And don't be ashamed of it, because there are multiple traumas, and traumas are negative experiences that have caused you pain and made you feel like you're in danger. That will take time to pop up, because sometimes you can disconnect as a way of coping and surviving, right?
Absolutely.
So give yourself time to unpack things, right? I think I told you when we started, like, let's do, you have the option of doing it between every 2 weeks and every week. But it depends on your self-awareness, because sometimes we need time to reflect.
You can tell them my self-awareness is high, just tell me.
Yeah, it's quite high.
Thanks.
And I think that's why it was easy for us to get along and to really communicate things in depth.
Yeah.
But because we are multifaceted, this is what I said, why I say this. We were raised by our religious institution. We were raised by the Kenyan culture itself. We were raised by our tribes. We were raised by our family, nuclear. And then we were raised by our extended family. Then we were raised by family friends.
And then we were raised by society.
Then we were raised by society.
And now some people are being raised by social media as well.
Yes. We are Occidental.
And now, like, once we have identified these cycles, how do you break the cycle of unhealthy relationships and now allow yourself to exist in a healthy one?
So when you break the cycle, number one is you need to slowly implement. Right?
It's a practical thing. You get the information and you have to actually...
So it's like going from theory
to
practice. Yeah. So, and then I always tell people, don't prosecute yourself because you will get some hiccups. But then what will happen is you'll start to identify personality vampires. And this is something I always talk about when I go on people's platforms, because you need to understand the characteristics that are seen as normal that you have a higher tolerance for, so you can be able to put boundaries. And it doesn't mean you have to be mean to them. You can just communicate and say, I don't really have the capacity, because I realize me as so-and-so, I am a very sensitive person and it's fine. And I don't think I have the capacity to deal with it. So learn yourself. That way you can communicate it to other people. And there's room for negotiation, but you need to really know.
For the negotiation, there should be a bare minimum as well. Like, this is as much as I can take.
Exactly, because I remember when I work with I've worked with narcissists, I've worked with very interesting personalities, but I think the people that really struggle are people who are authentic empaths and highly sensitive people. And I would encourage people to really just go and get that checked by a professional instead of claiming it, because you may not be an empath. You might even have narcissistic traits, right? And one thing I've noticed with authentic, like people who are actual empaths, is they give so much and then they feel hopeless. They feel unappreciated. So once you found out what's in your mind, how your brain functions, you'll be able to understand that this is how I navigate the world, right? I navigate the world with so much emotions, and I sympathize. If I see a dog get hurt, I want to pick up the dog. You need to know that there are people there who want you to take care of them. So you need to assert your boundaries.
Because you can't take care of everyone.
No. And then you need to get time to rejuvenate. And the reason why I like to talk a lot about empaths is because empaths also can also be created out of trauma. And with trauma, people become hypervigilant, right? So with empaths,
they're constantly on guard.
And then they're looking for whether somebody's sad, whether somebody needs saving. But imagine you can use that to also look for people who want to just have a good time, people who also want to contribute, who want to pour into your life. But it's very hard for people to be able to articulate that because most of them don't know that that's who they are. And a lot of people have already given them responsibilities. So breaking away that responsibility is very hard because people will fight them.
Okay. Gosh. Wow. So I think there's a lot of work with self in this journey of like dealing with daddy wounds.
Yes.
And I think what would help even the audience in regards to navigating this is like practical steps in regards to like the self-love journey in relation to daddy issues.
Yes.
So what would you recommend?
I would recommend people first to start off with their childhood experience. Yeah. The good, the bad. And I also stress, start off also understanding your family emotional tree. That's the best place to start off. Once you have started off there, then look at what were the things that hurt you. That's number 2. What were the things that you would have liked for them to have to do for you? Recognize how your relationship is with yourself currently. And also recognize, are there any elements of codependency around you? Right? Because that's what you're lacking. Yeah. Then number 3 is I would advise everyone to find a therapist that works with their personality and that they can build a rapport. When I say this everywhere, shop around. All right. Maybe me and you, we get along, but maybe some other personality doesn't get along with, and it's fine. Right.
I've also taken to even get to you, it's taken me 7 years and I think about 7 therapists as well to
7.
Girl. I've been in the streets looking for the right one because I think my needs have also changed. From time to time, I've been someone who was not religious at all. I didn't really conform to any religious beliefs or whatever. And then I'd had a therapist who was constantly looking at therapy from a religious POV. Then you find another one for venting and etc. until you find a balance of both. I think what you've done at Jipende Wellness would work so much, especially in our generation, because we are both trying to figure out how is this culture, spirituality, how is modernization coming together in a way that could heal me and heal my inner child.
Yeah. And I think that aspect is sociological, not psychological. So I remember that, and I would advise anyone who wants to pursue mental health that number 1, try and also get some courses, some courses under the Department of Sociology. It will really help you understand community-based societies and how they navigate the world, right?
Yeah.
And then the other thing is that you need to understand that our identity is not us. It is our community, right? So people will say, I am from this tribe. Us, we are like this, we are like that,
Kalenjin men are abusive.
Yeah.
Zoya too.
But you see, when there's certain stereotypes to a particular community, try and understand why are they behaving that way. Yeah. Is it
when you go back to the family? Yeah.
And people have forgotten that as African people, our history was wiped out. A lot of it was wiped out. But back then, the elders would sit down and have conversations with the young people, right? And it's like for some reason that is lost. Like having conversations more is, I'm going to tell you what to do.
And you do it.
Yeah. Why would you make somebody feel
Obliged.
Yeah, and so small. Because it's, imagine if I come to you, Stephanie, and I tell you, okay, I'm your therapist.
Everything that I say you will do.
You'll do. You look at me like I'm crazy, right?
Yeah.
But when we have, and I don't think people realize that even when we work together, this is how we have conversations with each other.
Yeah.
Because your opinion matters. It allows me to also understand who is the person I'm talking to. How does she think? Right? And I think I remember I asked you, do you want me to be, how would you like me to, what kind of therapist are you looking for? Would you like me to be firm? Would you like me to break it down easy? How would you like it to be?
I think there's certain situations where if I'm acting like an idiot, I think we need more firm actions. So I'm genuinely so happy we're having these conversations, and I think it will trigger so many other conversations in the future regarding the same. And hopefully even as a generation, we'll get to a point of complete healing whereby the majority will not be toxic relationships, but the majority will be healthier and very balanced relationships, because I think that's what I want for our generation.
Yeah.
Can we leave that with our parents? They're staying because we're being provided for a house. They're staying because he's the provider. They're staying because of the kids. I think even the kids would appreciate the fact that you've respected yourself enough to leave an unhealthy situation, to set precedents as to how we will treat ourselves in the event we encounter the same situations. I'm sure there's somebody here who maybe wanted to start therapy because they've now realized there's a pattern that they have. And probably they're realizing also as they're watching this episode that they probably have daddy issues.
Yeah.
What would be your parting shot for them?
I think number one is, as I said, shop around, find a therapist, but also have compassion, because once you identify you have daddy issues, you probably realized it through your romantic relationships, but also you might also realize it through your platonic relationships. But it doesn't mean that you can't heal from it. Yeah, it just shows you that you're a student of life, and that experiences change how we view ourselves and how we behave. And your character will continuously modify. Yeah. So let's say, for example, who you are today could be different from who you are tomorrow. Yeah. Just because you didn't know today doesn't mean you don't know tomorrow. And I've noticed when I go through, because the father wounds always show up in the inner child, in adverse childhood experience, when we're dealing with attachment styles, and when we're looking at your romantic relationships and friendship dynamics. Don't remember that child or that person or that adolescent or that person in their 20s. They were working on the insight that they had. So when you go to therapy, think about it as you're going to learn new things, and think about it as a way of healing, right? Yeah. But also don't prosecute yourself, even if you're a person who has your religious beliefs, because that's something we've discovered. The shame and the fear-based faith. Just hold yourself just give yourself compassion. Yeah.
That's really important.
Very important.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I appreciate you for coming here to have this conversation.
Thank you for having me.
Where can we find you? But also, please, just go to Africa Jipende Wellness. I don't even know what parting shot we're giving, but where can we find you if at all you want to be found?
Oh, if I want to be found,
yeah,
you can find me at Jipende Wellness. So we're also on Instagram. I need to be more active.
Yeah. You do. Or get a social media manager.
I do have a social media manager, but she has led me to all you beautiful people. Yes. So shout out to my manager. Yeah. You can also find us on our website at Africa Jipende Wellness. .com. Yeah. Very soon we're updating our website, but it will still be
Africa Jipende Wellness.com.
Or you could call me at 0745 60 19 92.
All right. Yeah. Thank you so much for watching, guys. I hope this conversation is healing. I hope you find some level of assurance and know that you're not in this by yourself. I think this entire season is dedicated towards just us finding a sort of balance, healing, and unraveling the things that we are not necessarily happy with, and finding the actual information that we need to be able to do so. So don't forget to like, subscribe. Don't forget to follow us on our podcast platforms, and we will see you on the next one.
Oh my gosh, that was really nice.
Yeah.